intereses a sus propios y poder convertir muchos de los recursos disponibles en sus intereses y poder ahondar más, ya que no tenemos todos estos recursos aún. Desde esta perspectiva, lo que hemos visto como algo muy valioso es en la división de las ciudades, regiones y otros actores públicos, así como lo que FMDB está haciendo. Y tenemos la resiliencia de los ciudadanos y de la región trabajando con otros actores y en su mayoría tenemos los bancos nacionales de desarrollo, de lo cual voy a hablar un poco más adelante. Y pensamos que estas alianzas deben de ser transversales. Afortunadamente, en la próxima COP vamos a tener este espacio con la cumbre de acción climática y vamos a tener estas alianzas para poder acelerar el financiamiento a nivel local y debe de ser seguido por el recurso humano. FNDB está trabajando mucho de este lado también, ya que es necesario traer voluntarios internacionales para poder trabajar para poder tener a los ciudadanos, pero también debemos de prepararlos para que puedan enfrentar los intereses de todo lo que viene afuera. Así es que FMTV está trabajando mucho trabajando con African Ministerios y en América Latina para poder desarrollar la gobernanza y toda la ayuda que viene de afuera para poder asegurarnos de que los intereses locales siempre sean respetados. Y finalmente, para concluir rápidamente, 10 años de experiencia que estamos teniendo en el sistema local financiero, todos hemos observado de que ya tenemos algunos actores que han tenido roles claves para el cambio del dinero que está siendo enviado a las áreas locales y podemos ver el apoyo de los bancos nacionales con los bancos públicos, con el mandato y el financiamiento de los actores locales, de las municipalidades y con empresas pequeñas y medianas, así como también con intermediarios financieros, ya que hemos recibido dinero de los gobiernos y en muchas ocasiones muchas instituciones financieras internacionales y han convertido la moneda local y la han invertido nuevamente en la moneda local. Esto también estamos viendo las intenciones y las contribuciones nacionales y podemos ver qué es lo que las ciudades pueden financiar e implementar en sus territorios. Esa es la razón por la cual hemos creado nuestra alianza, que es una alianza nacional. Y también tenemos muchos grupos multilaterales como CAF, BID, Banco Mundial. Y también traemos redes de ciudades que tienen distintas perspectivas multinivel. Para concluir, nos gustaría invitarlos porque tenemos una sesión al final del día organizada por la Alianza. Será a las 5 p.m. No sé en qué sala será. Thank you, Gabriela. Now, I would like to invite And now I invite you to take a seat. And now, before we start the panel for the first session, we are going to view a video that shares the role for the local areas regarding climate change.
El cambio climático es sin duda una realidad que nos afecta. Las ciudades son responsables del 70% de las emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero, pero al mismo tiempo, dado su destacado papel como centros de innovación y creatividad, son la clave para proporcionar las respuestas para combatir el calentamiento global en cada una de nuestras comunidades. El liderazgo de los gobiernos locales constituye una de las fuerzas impulsoras más importantes en la lucha global contra el cambio climático. Por esto, las ciudades están llamadas a tener un rol protagonista en la acción climática, ya que son ellas las que tienen la oportunidad de diseñar medidas y acciones para la mitigación y adaptación al cambio climático. Este año, en nuestra región, hemos entregado medallas a la mitigación a 65 ciudades por sus acciones de reducción de emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero, 106 medallas a la adaptación a ciudades que trabajaron en su resiliencia ante los cambios del clima, además de 17 medallas entregadas por cumplir con todos los compromisos y concluir sus planes de acción climática. Somos parte del cambio. Pacto Global de Alcaldes por el Clima y la Energía, la mayor red mundial de ciudades en la lucha contra el cambio climático.
Muy bien. Ahora para empezar nuestro...
Very well. Now, in order to start our first panel, that is going to talk about cities and regional governments, I would like to invite for the moderation Elena Cardoso, who is the director for GCON in the Americas. Also, Luis Hernando Campos, coordinator of foreign affairs for Belém. Marjorie Kaufman, Secretary of the Environment for Rio Grande do Sul, Brazil, Mayor Mr. Mauricio Granda Garrido, who is the Mayor of Pastaza in Ecuador and representative for Congope, and Mario Melendez, who is the Director for Environmental Management for the City of Panama. Is Mario here? Well, so let's go ahead and start. Elena, can you hear me? Hello? 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 I think it's too low. It's good morning. How are you? Thank you. It's very important, this interaction. I I would like to ask permission to speak to Portuñol because we have a mixed session between Brazilians and Latin Americans, and just to facilitate with my Portuñols, I will try to have everyone understand. For me, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for sharing the space with you. My name is Eliana Cardoso. I am the coordinator for the Global Compact for Mayors for Climate in the region of the Americas. For me, it's very important, this topic that we have discussed today, that we're going through, that happens because of a climate agenda that started more or less in 2015, nationwide, global wide, and it was translated to the cities. And why? Why are we talking about all of this? This is for survival. This is for the survival of humanity. This is very important to elevate this discussion because in the end, we need to receive this mission of responding to climate methods, and it was taking us a little bit of time, 8 years, to make sure that this multi-level governance to grow and keep on being strengthened between the climate agenda. It's very important to say that the cities have, in fact, adopted more and more of this agenda, and they have recognized the emergency for reduction and adaptation, and for the multi-level governance has hasn't probably helped us as quickly as it should. The responses we should bring for the climate environment that we suffer in all the that we are seeing here, and anyone that lives here has no relations with the climate change. I doubt that there isn't. Okay, we agree. Please, it's very important. This information exchange is very important for me. Another key point here is that we still don't have enough participations, and the goals that have been presented by us, by our nations, by our countries will not achieve with the effect that we have in the fight against climate change. In the last report of the first global suffrage is showing us that our world is far from complying with the objectives we have facing climate change and that we did 8 years ago in the Paris Agreement. So, friends, the subnational action is fundamental. So, and in order for us to complete quick answers and for climate change is very a very important point is that the mayors, the global covenant for mayors is there, and they are have already been acting on the planning for the action, mitigation, and adaptation. A very important point is that we have to work on this, and we need to keep on discussing on the greatest needs and as well as the channels that we have to unlock the great scale of the challenges. The first point is that the cities needed was financing. They still need financing, and they have already come here preparing with ideas, but they need to have access to resources. And also, there is a greater combination of the local leaders, and there was a great transparency and position to act with international financial institutions, and ensure that that the gathered information can be used to have access to a large scale action. This is why I believe that it's so important for us to be more clear and to see what are the upcoming steps. It's not just this, but in the promotion for the multi-level portion so that it can be optimized for the different clusters in climate change. The coordinator of the city of Belém, which is a city in the Amazon region in the northern part of Brazil, that will receive the COP in 2025, Luis Hernando Campos. And I will ask a question in Portuguese and in Portuñol as well to listen to the experience for an enactment and for the national government and the state government, as well as with other partners. What does it look like for the city of Belém? And if you have any stories of success to share with us. Good morning to all of you. Please receive a warm regard from the people of Belém. And we are very satisfied of being here. And here the key word here is governance. And we have been working on this. Apologies, this is the interpreter. The gentleman is speaking in another language.
para a troca de experiências, ações conjuntas, elaborações de planos conjuntos, tendo como um dos centros importantes a preservação da biodiversidade e a ação climática. Poucos dias depois, a Conferência Amazônica de Presidentes ratificou o Fórum de Cidades Amazônicas e mais, recomendou a organização do Tratado de Cooperação Amazônica de incluir o Fórum das Cidades Amazônicas na sua estrutura. Ou seja, isso em termos de construção de governabilidade tem uma dimensão imensa, porque não se trata apenas agora de uma aliança de cidades. Se tratam de cidades através dos seus representantes eleitos pelo povo, seus prefeitos, eleitos pelo povo, passam a fazer parte de uma estrutura regional que tem como papel, exatamente, aplicar políticas públicas que tenham a ver com a defesa da natureza, fortalecimento do protagonismo feminino, que tem a ver com as ações climáticas integradas, tudo como ficou descrito na carta que os presidentes aprovaram nessa conferência de culto. Ou seja, é uma experiência muito nova. Nós vamos ter um organismo coletivo de prefeitos que vai fazer parte de um instrumento de ação governamental de nível nacional. Qual é a importância disso? A primeira de todas, nada mais será decidido sobre nós sem nós. Os prefeitos das cidades amazônicas vão ser agora ouvidos, consultados. Nada mais sobre nós será feito sem nós. E mais, teremos a capacidade de fazer propostas, de fazer sugestões, de vanguardear iniciativas em relação às atividades, ao que pode ser feito no nosso mundo amazônico. E nós achamos que essa iniciativa, ela pode ter, inclusive, uma repercussão muito grande. Só antes de falar um pouco sobre isso, dizer que nesse exato momento, nós estamos construindo as regras de governança do Fórum de Cidades Amazônicas, ou seja, estatutos, como ele vai funcionar, a presidência, como ele se articula, como ele se financia. Quais são as organizações, e temos já muito bem encaminhada possibilidade, principalmente com o BID, mas outras instituições, como a Cooperação Alemã e outras entidades, outros fundos como esse, que são aliados e que vão investir na real constituição, de que forma que a Fórum das Cidades Amazônicas seja algo operante. Nós estamos prevendo pelo menos 4 reuniões anuais, sendo uma reunião plenária, outras 3 reuniões que são temáticas, porque, como todos sabem, a Amazônia, embora a gente fale Amazônia, na verdade são muitas Amazônias, né? São muitas Amazônias. A realidade das pequenas cidades é bastante distinta da realidade de cidades grandes ou metrópoles, como, por exemplo, Belém, Manaus, Iquitos, né? Letícia, com uma diversidade de problemas. Mas, no entanto, todas têm uma questão em comum, que é, se vem às voltas com um modelo de cidade que é um modelo colonial. Um modelo que foi construído com base na ideia da colonização. E que ideia era essa? Os agrupamentos humanos servem tão somente para serem uma espécie de feitoria que vai fazer com que os produtos da natureza possam ser enviados para os mercados da Europa. É isso. Todas as cidades da Amazônia foram feitas com esse sentido, com esse objetivo. Então, ou seja, cidades que foram construídas vendo a natureza ou como um inimigo, uma selva a ser devastada, ou então como fonte de mercadorias e lugar para se jogar o lixo. Fonte de mercancia e local para meter a basura. Isso que é. Então, o esforço de construção do Fórum das cidades amazônicas. Ele vem realmente fazer com que, inclusive, haja uma reflexão de fundo, que se nós não fizermos essa reflexão, vai ser muito difícil alterar o modelo de cidade que nós temos hoje, que é um modelo que é inimigo dos povos e da própria natureza. Bom, nós estamos muito esperançosos, contentes. Por quê? Em primeiro lugar, porque essa experiência está ocorrendo na Amazônia, que hoje é o centro do mundo. Seja porque é a mais ampla floresta tropical úmida do planeta, seja porque é o maior reservatório de água doce do planeta, seja porque é a reguladora climática do nosso continente, a Amazônia tem hoje esse protagonismo. E também porque Belém vai ser a sede da COP de 2025. E essa é uma responsabilidade que nós queremos dividir com as cidades, principalmente cidades do nosso continente, e os povos do mundo inteiro. Belém está fazendo a sua parte, ou tentando, começando. Com o apoio, e aí isso é uma coisa muito importante, foi construído um pacto entre governo federal, governo estadual, governo municipal. Esse pacto identificou as principais obras, as obras estruturantes que têm que ser feitas na cidade, e essas obras, todas elas tendo um crivo climático, não é? Então, seja a naturalização dos rios urbanos, seja a arborização, seja a construção de parques florestais, tudo isso trabalhando. Belém também está fazendo uma coisa fundamental, que é criar um processo popular de discussão de um plano de ação climática. A ideia é que nós estamos começando a discutir esse plano em todos os 72 bairros da cidade. A ideia é a aprovação do plano numa grande plenária no primeiro semestre do ano que vem, de forma com que a cidade não seja apenas o cenário da COP, mas de forma que Belém seja uma cidade protagônica, com um povo protagonista da COP. Por último, eu quero dizer, encerrando, o seguinte: afora tudo isso, nós estamos preocupados também em como alojar comodamente dezenas ou, quiçá, centenas de milhares de pessoas. Por quê? Porque nós, sinceramente, queremos que a COP em Belém retome aquela tradição das COPs com mobilização, com gente nas ruas, com debate, com movimentos, ou seja, força para empurrar nossos governantes, para ajudarem eles a tomarem as medidas ambiciosas, tomarem as medidas ousadas que o tempo exige. O tempo que é curto e está se esgotando. Então, é isso. Contem com Belém e nos ajudem. Muito obrigado. Temos esperança.
Gracias, gracias Luis. 30, sí. Me gustaría ahora de escuchar un poco de la experiencia de la ciudad de Panamá y saludar Mario Meléndez, director de gestión ambiental de la ciudad. Escuchar un poco de su experiencia, especialmente en una actuación en colaboración con socios del sector privado, del tercer sector y otras experiencias exitosas en la ciudad que permitieron que la ciudad avanzase en la agenda climática y o de acceso a financiamiento. Gracias.
Buenos días, muchas gracias por permitirnos estar acá. Primero que nada, un cordial saludo de parte del alcalde José Luis Fábregas, que no pudo estar hoy acá.
José Luis Fábregas, that was unable to join us here. I'm here representing him. The municipality of Panama, since the year 2014, is perhaps the project that we have been using that is called Zero Waste. And it's about the placement of recycling spots all throughout the country, and this is so we can have manage properly the waste and and the repurposing of materials that can be used. This is legislation that is able until 2035. Unable. It doesn't matter what administration is in office. So through this project, we were looking to create partnerships that will, one, allow us to have a greater push and a greater publicity facing society and the audience at large. And we did this through an association, an organization in Panama called Fundación Ancon. They jointly with the mayor's office, the stakeholders such as Coca-Cola, Nestle, different actors, they joined forces and they procured the funds to create the stations. Currently, we have over 20 stations in different points of the city. So those funds that have been focused to, first of all, to create stations, and then we'll have a process where Ancon externally will administer the recollection of all those stations until we had certain. They were going to the different areas, and little by little, after a station turns a year, it comes back to the municipality of Panama. And we could see that we were able to collect all the, and this is all the information we were able to collect. This is one of the key projects we were able to develop with them. And then during the pandemic and looking at the need of keep on doing this work, we created a door-to-door system in all the area of Old Town. So now we have this with a truck, 3 weeks, 3 times a week, with a group of people committed with this work, between neighbors for the area that have been joining us. And it has been very interesting how the owners of areas are interested in being a part of this project. So all of this is with the funds of external organizations, that have had the opportunity to work on this. So we took this logistics point and we keep on executing it. Why are we accepting this? For the need of public spaces of placing this. So this is like the key project we've been developing, and afterwards, for a few years, we have focused on visiting schools to work with students of 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. We're talking about 11 and 12 years, everything regarding environmental education, to teach them a good disposition of waste management and the proper way to do waste management, and to be in protected areas and green areas close to the schools. So the current focus of the mayor's office is to continue with those projects for recycling and at the same time manage the majority of the information and grant our children 15 years, 10 years, 20 years, the ones that are going to be here with us. So we're going to be focusing on that, knowing that this is the only opportunity that we have in the future. We as adults, there are many things to do, and if we don't know the generation that's coming and we're not clear of the steps we need to take, we're going to be running out of gas. Afterwards, we have other activities that we know, and we don't have a solution. And for 2 years, we have been organizing cleanups at the beaches, and we have been calling universities to send their students with this topic of raising awareness of the damage that we are creating. All of these projects in the end are being executed thanks to internal funds and with NGOs, organizations, companies that are contributing to projects to create in the future a change. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Mario.
Thank you very much, Mario. I don't know any cities that do not know the great challenge of waste management. And as a society that is in its majority urban, we have to be sustainable for each one of these sectors. So thank you very much for sharing this experience and the partnership that we've created with different fundamental sectors and different challenges. Now let's go back with Brazil with another perspective. Now we're speaking with the secretary at the state level from the southern part of Brazil. We're not in the Amazon. We changed the weather. The challenges are many are the same, and we could hear the experience at a government intermediate level that has a fundamental role. With, for example, Brazil is very large, and at a state government, there is a necessary difference to accelerate the responses and to make sure that the policies nationwide are stayed in the city as well. So, Marjorie, I would like to listen to your experience, and from my point of view, an interesting question. What would be your greatest challenges for governance to support the cities and to launch the thematic challenges in the mitigation agenda, for example, in the development of technical capacities, and how do you see the role of the state right now? Thank you. Good morning to everyone. I will switch now to Portuñol, but the Brazilian states, we have this hard job that we need. We're hard at work of having this. The Mercosul have 497 municipalities or cities. So the variation of the expertise on climate change is huge. We have a topic here of an agenda for Climate 20, for Pro Climate 2050 that was presented on Monday for the states, for the country, for everything, and these are strategies for climate issues that are looking for the connection between federations, countries, states, and cities. Next slide, please. The strategic mapping for the government has been structured for objective lines that are sustainable, and it has a connection between the different secretariats. And we have here the part for the environment that has been connected from the innovative economic movement, and there is a succession for the environmental agenda. This line for policies starts in 2010 with an access with a focus on the intergovernment areas and how all of the state-owned is. How are we working from 2019 to 2020? And in this panel, we are demonstrating this experience that came up from this need to communicate ourselves with the cities. And that is within the strategic plan, part that speaks of environmental education for awareness. I'm sorry. These strategies that we worked a lot on the reduction, mitigation, but in the last 2 or 3 months, we had environmental disasters with an
creo que ya el tiempo ya justo me pusieron el end, pero bueno, estamos aquí y gustosos de poder participar con todos ustedes. Muchas gracias.
Agradezco a todos que aquí se quedaron con nosotros, agradezco por su atención. En adelante, Bruna, muchas gracias a todos.
Bueno, siguiendo nuestra agenda, ahora nos gustaría invitar a Dr. Mahmoud Mohildin, Dr. Mahmoud, que es el campeón de alto nivel de la COP del Egipto. Welcome, Dr. Mahmoud. Can you hear us?
Yes, thank you so much. I've been hearing you from the very beginning. I hope that.
Sí, los he estado escuchando desde el principio. Espero que me puedan escuchar bien ahora. Muy bien. Muy bien, muchas gracias. Seré breve. Solamente quiero darle las gracias a todos ustedes por permitirme la oportunidad de hablar con ustedes y hablar acerca de estas ubicaciones y trabajando con estos clientes. Y permítanme iniciar hablando con esos estimados colegas, hablando acerca de ese evento tan importante de la Semana del Clima llevándose a cabo en la ciudad de Panamá. Y me gustaría darle las gracias al ICLIA y los puntos focales por los grupos temáticos para la Alianza de Marrakech y los socios de la Alianza de Marrakech. Tengo 4 puntos que mencionar y básicamente es, de manera formal, nosotros reconocemos la importancia del liderazgo de los alcaldes y de todos los socios en este trabajo, especialmente enfatizando la resiliencia en preparación a la COP17 y el trabajo que estamos realizando. Y es muy importante el trabajo que estamos realizando para trabajar en Dubái en un par de semanas, donde Dubái...
I refer here to the letter launched last year on the Resilience Day at COP27, signed by myself and Nigel Topping, which recognizes the importance of the signatories of the cities race to resilience and their collective commitments towards transforming urban spaces and adapting to climate change. Noting that some cities are home to millions of people, and many cities have already advanced solutions, not just in mitigation and investments in renewables, but investments in adaptation as well. The city's race to resilience is defining urban resilience and the capacity of cities, systems, business institutions, communities, and individuals to survive, adapt, and grow, no matter what chronic stresses and shocks are being exposed to. This is very much fundamental for any kind of serious implementation of the climate action agenda. Let me as well emphasize that it's not just for the Paris Agreement and the climate action agenda in all of its 3 dimensions when it comes to mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage. But as being emphasized recently during the General Assembly meetings in New York, there is a critical role for cities and municipalities to support the work toward the Sustainable Development Goals. We are very much, as it is in the case of the Paris Agreement, we are very much as well off track when it comes to the implementation of SDGs. Actually, of the targets that have been measured, of the 169 targets, 140 targets have been measured, and only 12% of them are on track. There is no way to assume that we can really be doing a good job in this front in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and the climate agenda, which is SDG number 13, with the related matters related to nature and biodiversity in SDG 14 and 15, without the leadership of cities. And here when I talk about cities, yes, of course, governors, mayors, and city leaders are very much key, but we're talking as well about the leaders of civil society, private sector, organization, and beyond. I reflected more of this work in what could be done in areas related to data, finance, implementation in a recent book co-authored by a professor from EFIT University in Colombia. It's basically about the role of business, government, and the SDGs, and the role of the public-private partnerships, including at the cities level, and the work that could be conducted here. And there are many examples from Latin America. Another piece that I contributed to is basically about how to recover better from shocks. And again, the centrality of the role of cities cannot really be emphasized. The following point is basically about a very critical matter here. We can talk, and I listened as much as I can to the interventions earlier. We can talk about the ambitions, the preparation, and it's great that we're talking here about the preparation for COP30 in Amazonia in less than a couple of years from today, and we need to work hard for that. It's good as well that Brazil is hosting us for the G20 for starting actually its term already. So between the G20 work led by Brazil and the preparation for COP30, and with the emphasis on the Amazonia and the role of community there is very much important. But without finance, we cannot do much. Actually, without finance, we can do nothing. And here I can refer you to two important pieces. One that was conducted through the leadership of Professor Singh of India and Professor Summers of the US for the G20, in which they tried to determine the gaps of finance for climate and development. And let me just assure everybody here that there is a good conclusion that climate finance is development finance. There is no contradiction between the two. If we are doing better on energy, if we are doing better on adaptation, this is good for sustainable development. But it's all about design of policies and institutions, especially at the local level. But in that piece that I mentioned by Larry Summers and Professor Singh, and the other piece by Vera Songwe, Amar Bhattacharya, and Nick Stern, when they try to see how to bridge the gaps of finance, the heavy lifting is coming from, not from external finance, it's from domestic resource mobilization, including private sector and what could be available at the local and national level. When they estimated a gap of $2.5 trillion for developing economies and emerging markets, excluding China, roughly $1.5 trillion had to be mobilized domestically. So what kind of a system that is supportive to sustainable development and climate action and the progress of societies and the investments in infrastructure, the investments in human capital, including education and health, investments in digital transformation, and investment in resilience, including climate action. What kind of investment will be there without adequate domestic resource mobilization? People normally in the past would say domestic resource mobilization is only about taxing people at the national, local level. But it's basically about better mobilization of all resources, including natural resources, better utilization of the extractive industry. And of course, the Latin America and the Caribbean region are very blessed with endowments when it comes to natural resources. So natural resources, domestic resource mobilization, public-private partnership, and dealing better with the small and medium enterprises, with a better system of municipalities finance, because mayors and governors are at the forefront on dealing with the people and dealing with the shocks when it happens, and they have been given more responsibility, either in centralized systems of government or federalized systems of government. But at the same time, they don't really have adequate resources when it comes to finance. I'd like to refer you to a very important piece that came up from the World Bank a few years ago about, it's called a Manual of Municipalities Finance, in which it outlines priorities of funding for sustainable development, including climate action, but at the same time, it tries to mobilize resources smartly without complicating the budgets of the people or overwhelming the budgets of the state with better partnership with the private sector, and there is a bigger role for philanthropies and foundation. My final point, and this is very much important for your work. Everybody knows more and more about what we should really be doing in mitigation. Investments in solar energy, in wind farms, green hydrogen is very promising, including natural hydrogen, sources of natural hydrogen in Latin America and the Caribbean. But actually, the very critical point here is the rest of the story when it comes to adaptation. And adaptation had been very much vague until we met in Sharm el-Sheikh last year, and now we have an outline agenda from infrastructure, role of cities, role of settlements, water management, and how to support the resilience, not just of the infrastructure, but what's more important, the resilience of society when it comes to shocks. I remember very well when I was listening to a minister from Latin America and the Caribbean, the Minister of Finance of Chile in Marrakesh, and he summarized the story of our lives today. That summer in many countries means fire in forests, and winter means floods. This means that we need to pay more attention to adaptation, investment in the resilience, and we need to do better definitely in the two other files of mitigation and loss and damage. But there is something that I'd like to alert you to, and I hope that we can take it seriously. What's so-called the nationally determined contributions, or the voluntary commitments of countries, what's so-called the NDCs. It seems to me, based on evidence coming from many developing economies, and I can share with you something very similar to what we are facing in Latin America and the Caribbean, that we got from Africa. Flows of funds to adaptation agenda, including all of what I said, is around $11 billion in the whole of Africa. Just take it as an example. But the worrying part is that the national determined contributions, as formalized and prioritized by the state, is five times this figure. 5 times this figure. Worse than this, independent experts are telling us that the actual needs is not 11 billion, it's not 55 billion. It is at least 10 times that figure, more than 110 billion. I think the case of Africa is not very much different from the case of the middle income and low income countries of Latin America. So we need to work hard to reflect the priorities of countries, and more of a bottom-up approach that can really make sure that the priorities of countries based on cities' needs, township needs, and communities' needs are adequately reflected in the adaptation priorities. And then we need to seek the funds, starting by domestic resource mobilization, and trying to see as well, as much as we can, better role for private sector, because the private sector is not exceeding 2 to 3% of finance still in the adaptation agenda. And finally, we need to make sure that we are not going to be funding and dealing with our climate crisis by creating a debt crisis. Unfortunately, more and more of finance going to climate action is dependent more on debt-based instruments. What we need, and here it's the leadership of the city mayors and governors of regions, that we need to articulate pipeline of bankable projects. I like to refer to our work with ICLAC and the rest of the UN system in building pipeline of bankable and investable projects from cities and towns to national level to regional collaboration in a global platform. These are the 4 levels of action, and I'm very happy to see that city leaders are now participating in key global platforms. Building pipeline of bankable investable projects. We have a good example from Egypt, in which we built a platform as well for green and smart projects with thousands of participants. And actually on Saturday, we'll be assessing these projects for the 2nd year. Great competition between women-led projects, youth entrepreneurs, community development projects, small and micro enterprises and medium-sized and mega projects. But that requires this kind of catalytic role of partnership. Solutions here again, we need to work hard on the adaptation agenda. Mitigation is important, but without adaptation, we're going to be losing a lot. Loss and damage is of great importance, and I'm happy to see the leadership, especially from the small islands and small states of the Caribbean, in addition to the rest of the Latin America and the Caribbean community. We need to take matters related to finance more seriously. We need to take issues related to public-private partnership in its next level. And finally, the nationally determined contributions, the NDCs, these are basically very much important, especially for assessing the effort and impact, need to reflect more the work at the local level, not just at the center. Having said that, I'm very grateful to the opportunity. I'm very thankful to your leadership, and apologies that I cannot be with you in person, but I was happy to be part of the Climate Week last year in the Dominican, and it was very active with many good solutions, especially on the finance and investment toolkit. Very grateful to the opportunity. Best wishes. Thank you, and great greetings from Cairo, Egypt.
Thank you very much for your contributions, Mr. Mahmoud, and for the time in Egypt. It's pretty late, I'm sure, so thank you for your effort for being with us. Bueno, siguiendo un poco como rápido porque pasamos el tiempo, pero no podríamos cerrar esa sesión sin escuchar a las instituciones financieras. Entonces, que voy a invitar a Claudia Gutiérrez, que es jefa de iniciativas estratégicas en Fonplata, y también Oscar Guevara, que es el ejecutivo principal de CAF. Por favor. Y también, en fin, les pedir que hagamos las intervenciones un poco más corto, en 2 minutos tal vez, y también Leah Reynolds desde la ONU Habitat, por favor. Bueno, sí. Bueno, no voy a tomar mucho tiempo, solamente quiero hacer la misma pregunta para, en fin, los tres. ¿Cuáles son las brechas y cuáles son las oportunidades para las ciudades financiar en su acción climática y cómo sus instituciones
climate change, and what are some of the institutions that are working for us? I give you the microphone, Claudia. Well, good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation. As an institution, for us, it is very important that it's a pleasure to take care of our experiences regarding our member states from the climate action plan to follow up the projects for the public sector. Complata was created for financial private fund integrated by Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, and our portfolio is composed in projects of small scale, such as urban development, energy, transportation, water, sanitation, and we can see the modification of our constitutional agreements as well as other ratings, long-term and other things that have been proposed that we transform in a development bank with the possibility of incorporating other member states. In 2021, we took a very important step for all of the regional banks to approve the framework for the sustainable goal, and this allows us to have access to a sustainable goal for bonus and other financial instruments, and to have other competitive edges. And these resources, aside from having the commitment for other banks and the conditions of offering our lenders other financing instruments, are oriented for the implementation of projects of mitigation adaptation for the effects of climate change, like, for example, renewable energy, clean efforts, prevention, control, contamination, sustainable management of water, and residual and waste management and residual waters. And we need to demonstrate the commitment that we have to the climate agenda in the country. And And we could see this, and we have contributed this for energy, so we could see the energy bonds, and we can replace the fossil fuel sources. And we are working in Brazil for the urban area and also for the arborization parks. Also, something else that we're working on is in the creation of non-reimbursable technical funds where we are going to implement innovative decisions so that we could have an existent structures for developments, and we could create construction areas for circular economy and the reduction of the material of construction, as well as solutions that would promote the efficient use and to promote this challenge that we have as a bank, and the role that we're taking for financing is to have the resources that are most useful. As we don't know, you know that we are a bank that it's agile, but climate change is not a need, it's an emergency, as other panelists have mentioned. And as a community and as humanity, we don't have a plan B. So the Mexican representative says we need less desk and more territory, and he's right. As financiers, we are at your service to enter and work on those solutions. Thank you very much. Now, well, I am Oscar Guevara from CAF of the Development Bank for Central America and the Caribbean, and you could see there. And the majority of the projects are leveraged by a sovereign guarantee that is received by the different nations, and this varies country by countries, and it's possible in other countries it's possible to have a necessary intermediation, because this is an additional layer of complexity, and of course there is no obstacle because we don't always have a direct road to enter the multilateral area, and this is a starting point. And what's coming next is that all of the development bank has been aligned, and we can have green taxonomies, and the more trends that we have, we can have a criteria for responsibility, and we are capable of being transparent on the type of financing for the mitigations of biodiversities, and we can have clear rules that has been communicated, and we understand the activities that are eligible for us, and it's very important because, as I said, this way we need to incentivize this, and we could see the green financing. It's very important within this dynamic for the creation of the infrastructures. We can have the greatest financing area, and we have more interest in adaptation, protection, and we can have an infrastructure for protection for the protection of the coastal areas, something that has to do with the disaster risk management. And precisely, this isn't just an expectation, but it's an invitation to the partners of cities for investment projects that have to do with disaster risk management. Well, thank you very much. I'm just going to say one thing in English.
The chance to continue these conversations. This is not the end of this road, this Latin American Climate Week. It's the beginning, and we will continue these conversations at COP28. So I'm really happy to announce that we'll have a second ministerial meeting on urbanization and climate change taking place at COP28 on the 6th of December. It's co-hosted by the COP28 presidency, UN Habitat, and the high-level champions. And what we will discuss there is exactly this topic. what do we need to do in order to get more money to the cities that they can accelerate local climate action. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you in Dubai later this year.
Bueno, me gustaría de darles muchas gracias por la participación. Fue un poco más corta, pero la intervención fue precisa y gracias a todos que nos siguieron en línea y también presencial.